But hi guys, my name is Stephanie. I'm with Senior Advocate and welcome to our Salli class all about the arts. This is our Senior Advocate Lifelong Learning Institute. We're so happy to still be able to do these even though we can't do them in person. We're thrilled to be able to get online and see everyone's faces, and it's just nice to kind of reconnect. We're hoping we can do it in person very soon, but we'll see what happens. So today we are with Tidewater Arts Outreach. We are partnering with them on this series. It is all about the arts, and I wanted to say hi to Kate and have Kate Powell say a couple of words about what they do there. She is the Director of Development at Tidewater Arts Outreach. So Kate, let me go ahead and unmute you so you can chat and tell us a little bit more about what you have going on.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much for attending. We're delighted to host the wonderful Michele Barnes, who's going to be your facilitator today. She is lovely, and you will very much enjoy this, I promise. But Tidewater Arts Outreach is an organization that brings arts programming to people in all sorts of circumstances. We typically, when people are experiencing isolation, we bring you the arts. And I think everybody in this world right now is experiencing some significant isolation, myself included. So we have actually found ourselves busier than ever. And when Stephanie reached out about this Salli class and us partnering, it was kind of a no-brainer. So Stephanie, thank you so much for having us and for making this partnership happen. I believe Michele is going to be doing a art appreciation type talk today, but I will save that for the artist. I'm a musician myself, so visual art is not my bag. I mean, I love it. I love art pieces. I love going to Stockley and buying things, but I cannot speak to it as an expert. But yeah, so that's what TAO does. Stephanie, if it's okay with you, I was going to put a link to our giving page on the chat, if that is all right. So
that would be wonderful. Yeah, so what we're doing with these series is typically there is a fee involved in our Senior Advocate or Lifelong Learning classes. For these virtual classes, we are not charging anybody for participating. What we are asking though is if they're interested and if they want to donate to the two charities that we're working with, of course, with this series, Tidewater Arts Outreach, please go to their website, find out about what they do. They do some really wonderful things in the community, and it certainly is a great organization to support. So we'll also tell you that again at the end of the video. So I wanted to just go ahead and get right into it. Michele Barnes, she's an artist at the Artist Gallery in the Virginia Beach Arts Center, and she has got a really fun presentation for us today. So how it's going to work is we are going to, since everybody is on mute, we are going to type in our thoughts and comments in the chat section. So if you don't know where that is, go down to the bottom of your screen. You might need to use your cursor to have it show up, and right in the middle on the bottom it should say chat. If you click on that, over on the right-hand side, you'll see a whiteboard with all of the participants. Go down to the bottom right-hand corner, and you can type in whatever you like. I'm going to type in hello right now so that everybody can see where it shows up. Let's see, we want to send it to everyone in the meeting. And there we go. So that's how we're going to do chats. And then at the end, we'll also do questions and answers that way as well. So Michele, take it away. Thank you for joining us too.
Sure. I just want to say the Tidewater Arts Outreach is a wonderful organization that I've been volunteering for, I don't even know how many years, maybe 16. And I really appreciate you offering me this opportunity to talk about art. And the Virginia Beach Arts Center, I don't know if anyone's ever been there. It's near the ocean front, 17th Street between Baltic and Mediterranean. And the Art Center is basically a group of art volunteers that exhibit their work, and their the idea is to provide an educational environment and inspire the public, people of all ages, to experience visual arts and engage in creating art. They have classes there as well. There's also a fabulous pottery studio there that's really amazing, full of light. And the artists there are studio artists. I'm one of the studio artists. And then there are artists that show their work on the walls. And every month we have an exhibit with a theme. And in the front of the building, I'm going to show you the building in a minute. There's an open gallery space, which is really beautiful. And that's where we have our monthly artworks. So I don't know if I can see anybody raise their hand. Well, just think about it. If you've ever been there, I'm sure you've been to a museum in the area, like the Chrysler or MoCA. I don't know about you, but for myself, I've gone to museums and galleries, for a long time because I work in visual arts. But sometimes people say, oh, I'm not going to go to a museum because I don't, know anything about art. Well, you don't have to know anything about art. It's your thoughts and feelings about the artwork to make it an enjoyable experience. Or you may hate something. That's okay too. Whatever your feeling is. And I'm going to show you a variety of artwork. So right now I'd like to go to sharing my, where am I? Give me 1 second. I don't know if you can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
And I did want to mention to everybody, if you'd like to make your screen larger, you can do that by going up in the top right-hand corner. There's a little box, looks like a Rubik's Cube, and then there's another box right next to that. That will automatically put you in full screen, so that way you'll be able to see a little bit better some of the pictures.
So the Garden of Life exhibit is currently up at the gallery, and it'll change. June 1st, we'll start a new exhibit, and that will be Following the Light. And it's always interesting to see what artists come up with. I think Garden of Life is kind of straightforward. It's going to be images of whatever you think a garden is, flowers, insects, etc. And this is an image of the poster, Garden of Life. We always have a nice visual image to show for the gallery. And the outside of the gallery is this beautiful purple. It really stands out. And Virginia Beach Art Center is the combination of the Artist Gallery and the Pottery Studio, which is in the back of the gallery. So those are the doors you would be walking through. And next door is a nice little bakery. So if you ever get over there, you can have something really good at the bakery and then enjoy looking at the art. So this is the interior, part of the interior. It's 3 different views, a little confusing, but you get a sense of how the artwork is hung on the walls outside of the studios. There are about 13 art studios, and most of them are shared with 2 to 3 people. Very light. It's a beautiful space. The first image I'm showing you, I want you to think about it, obvious of what it is, and think about what colors is the artist using. I see a limited color palette. So mostly I see the blues, orange, and green, and black. And just think about, what the artist is trying to say. Have you ever had a garden or been to a botanical garden that has these monarch butterflies? And I guess those are the milkweed flowers. So the artist has painted this in acrylic paint. If you don't know what the medium is, just the material the artist uses. And in this case, it's acrylic. And acrylic is basically like your latex paint that you paint walls with, but it has more pigment or more of the color added to it. It's a finer, I guess a finer grade of the pigments. So that's what this one is. And sometimes it can be glossy, sometimes flat. So I thought it would be fun to see the artists worked in a series. And oftentimes artists like to work in series. And the first two on the right have that same monarch butterfly. And what feeling do you get when you look at the one on the top right as opposed to the one on the bottom? It's pretty much cropped, which means you're cutting off parts of the insect in there, as if you were looking at a microscope. If you've ever seen paintings by Georgia O'Keeffe, she'll zoom in and show you like the interior of a flower. So you get closer and closer to the flower. And the one on the left, they're all acrylic, but a whole different feeling in the one on the left as opposed to the other two. It's a different butterfly. I don't really know the name of that one. And you may look at them and say, well, I really like the colors of the monarch butterfly paintings, not so much the other one. Or you might have the opposite thought. And that's okay. You want to think about how the artists compose the painting. Where did the artist place their main focus? Most artists will try to have a main focus unless it's abstract. So another thing is you don't know the sizes of any of these. So you can only guess in my image unless you look up what the artist has as the dimensions. So in a book or watching like a video or looking at these, you would never know the size. And if you go to a museum, you see the actual painting, and that's the beauty of seeing it in person, is that you see how big or how small. Like for instance, the Mona Lisa, you may think that the Mona Lisa is a big painting, but it's really not that big. It's surprising. But that all impacts the artwork. So the one that we looked at originally is 8 inches by 10 inches. That's the one on the bottom right. The other two, I can tell you their sizes, just to give you an idea. The one on top is very small, 3.5 inches top high by 6 inches. And the one on the left is another small painting, 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. So you wouldn't really know that by just looking. So I thought this would be a fun one to see. One of our artists works with books, and she alters the books. She transforms them in amazing ways. And this one is obviously the butterflies coming out of a book, Butterflies and Moths. So everything she cut out and is placed on the wall with tape. And I just thought it's kind of fun to see a sculptural image of the butterflies. And what feeling does that give you? That one is called Free. I'll tell you in 1 second. I'm sorry. Freedom or something to that effect. Sorry, here it is. I'm looking at my other screen. This is called Free at Last. So I just thought it's very interesting. And I guess if you were to purchase an artwork like this, all of them are for sale. You could place those butterflies or have the artist place them on your wall however you want. Sorry. My next one is, if you know your flowers, you may recognize this as a chrysanthemum. And this painting is painted with Asian inks and watercolor in the style of Chinese painting. And the artist created this. I'm not going to tell you what size. I want you to think about what size and think about the colors. When you saw the butterflies, there were more colors, and this one is much more muted colors, and you may love that. It's kind of quieter as far as the colors, but it's very active, And looking at it, you see there's a lot of motion in this image. You can move your eyes around, and that's what the artist would like you to do. Keep you interested and keep you focused on their artwork. So you see the little bees, that helps bring your eye back into the chrysanthemums. Otherwise, you might just look off the page and then you're gone looking at another artwork. So kind of the artist is working for themselves, but also trying to make it an interesting composition or placement of the objects. I don't know what that is. I didn't do that. But let me show you another chrysanthemum. I don't know what, hold on a second. I don't know what that line is. I didn't do that. That's weird. I don't know how to get rid of it. Well, ignore the lines, please. And you see another beautiful chrysanthemum painting. And this one is with watercolor. And it kind of reminded me of the way the first artist with the butterfly painted. It's kind of opaque looking. And a lot of times watercolors will be very transparent, as in the previous chrysanthemum painting. And you could kind of see the white of the paper, but this artist uses it in a more opaque way. Maybe she adds white, I'm not really sure. Thank you, whoever did that. And I wanted to show you the difference. It was hard to get them both on the same screen, but I wanted you to compare the feelings that you get in both of these artworks. Totally different feeling. And you may love both of them, but in a different way. It may remind you of your garden or somebody else's garden with the chrysanthemum. Which one looks more realistic? You may like something that's not as realistic. You know, these are the things that, feelings that you'll have when you look at an artwork. And usually I think people look at an artwork kind of quickly, unless there's something in there really grabbing them or it connects with them. And the artist is trying to get a connection with the viewer to make it more interesting and have an experience. This one is a still life painting. So still life painting is obviously objects that are still, and that can range from a traditional vase with flowers like this one, or it could be a still life of your makeup on the counter. That could be a still life. And I like the way the artist has reflected the flowers in the mirror instead of just having the flowers themselves, but it kind of gives it a little more interest, and your eye moves back and forth. So you're looking at the main orchids and then you kind of look over to the left, but because the main orchids are more detailed or more, they're the center stage, you go back and look at it. So it keeps you in that, interested in that piece. Now the next one I'm going to show you is another comparison. Oh, not yet. Sorry. This is another orchid painting where the artist has cropped it again. Anytime you see a painting that's cropped like that, it is most likely a more contemporary work or more modern. It's kind of a little tense looking at the edges. You know, you feel like they're being squished. That's the feeling I get. But I just love the way the artist had captured the light and made them really shine. And it's a beautifully rendered orchid. They're both beautiful. And he's got that little bud, those two buds coming off. And you kind of think your eye is moving down that way to the right, but you kind of brought back again because he has that that orchid on the left and also the other stems of the orchid. So he's able to bring you back into the picture, and the colors are just beautiful. This painting actually got an honorable mention, and it's by Vinny Bumate, who is the gallery manager. And I want to show you a comparison of the two. And the sizes, let's see. Vinny, the one on the right is only 8 by 10, or 10 inches by 8 rather. You always do height over width. Some people don't, but that's, if you look in a book, you'll see that that's usually the case. So the one on the left is 16 by 20. So it's almost twice as big as the one on the right. So your feeling about it will be different viewing it in a gallery or in a museum. You have more impact, I think, with the one on the left because it's larger, but sometimes the smaller ones are more impactful, I guess. I thought this was a really fun painting, and it's watercolor, and it's very, when you first look at it, I don't know what you're thinking, but I see right away, I see all the lines that are kind of directing you all over the place. And the flowers are kind of a surprise to me. And the artist describes this as flowers and jellyfish. I didn't know that there were jellyfish inside the jar holding the flowers. This is also watercolor, 28 inches tall by 22 inches wide. So it's big. And I think seeing it in person would really make a difference. This is, making it look kind of small and busier. I guess it would be less busy in person. And the artist says she would always like to depict flowers in a traditional way, but had trouble doing it. So she wanted to do it the way she saw flowers. Also, she loves jellyfish. So that's why she put them together. It's up to the artist to do whatever they want. And then it's up to you whether you like it or not. And the lines remind me of an insect flying around in it. It's unusual, and I think that captures the attention of the viewers. This is a painting of, I don't know if you'll recognize them. At first I wasn't sure, but they're honeysuckles. And you could see there's a bee on the upper left, and the bottom right, I guess, is the part that you wouldn't really see. It's like underneath all the busyness of those honeysuckles. And I think about them because when I was a kid, we always smelled the honeysuckles on the way to the beach, and they just smelled so beautiful. So I can smell them, like looking at this, it reminds me of that wonderful experience as a kid. And maybe that's something you might share. I like the feeling of this painting. It's a different type of watercolor where the artist is painting on a slick surface, a paper called Yupo, or not sure how you say it, Y-U-P-O. And it kind of lets the watercolor bead up a little bit, so it doesn't sink in. It's almost got like a plastic coating. And it makes it very interesting, just the way the colors are pooling. This one is 11 inches tall by 14 inches. And the artist says, I am reminded of how much my younger son, now grown, would love the fragrance that filled the house during the night. So another wonderful image. And that's what draws an artist to painting their experience of things, and hopefully sharing that with you. Here we have a three-dimensional artwork by the artist Fred Freeman. He does very whimsical, fun sculptures, and this one is the hummingbird. It's about 9 inches tall, and he's one of the potters at the Artist Gallery. And this one is a more realistic one than I've seen. He has very funny ones that are very comedic. But, you know, think about the way he used the colors. Is it more realistic when you see a hummingbird with their beautiful shimmering colors? Would you want to make an artwork like this yourself using the clay? Clay is very forgiving and kind of very relaxing to work in. And it's a great expressive medium. So you may want to try it sometime. It's a little messy, but I think that's kind of part of the charm of it. Just like a kid playing in the mud. Here's another sculptural piece, a hat. And you would think it was a painting by the background, but that's just the setting the artist wanted to display the artwork in. And at the gallery, it doesn't have that background. It's just the hat. So you have to kind of walk around to see all the flowers on the hat. And it's very intriguing and wonderful. I don't know how heavy. I think about it as being like heavy on my head, even though flowers are so light. And I never tried one on, but you know, what's your thought about that? Would you want to wear a hat like that on a special occasion? I think I would be maybe a little shy to wear something like that, but I don't know. It could be kind of fun. And the artists, these are images. The one on the left is a little blurry. That was the image that she had sent to the gallery to show the work. But it's a real fun hat she's got on there on the left. And then the one on the right is a fun one too. That looks more like something you might wear. But, you know, all of this, the variety of art is amazing and fun. I always think of looking at art as being a fun thing and not something you have to worry about whether it's good or not to anybody else. The critics may love it or they may hate it. One critic loves it, one critic doesn't like it. Doesn't matter. It's what you like. This is a painting that was done. I don't know if you can tell the medium, or you can think about what medium it would not be. You don't always know. If an artist says something is a mixed media, that means they could be using 2 different materials or 5. And if they don't tell you, it's hard to know sometimes. I always guess. I would like it if they told you what the medium was. So this one happens to be pastel. And the artist is from New Orleans, but she's one of our resident studio artists. And I love her color. She does use a lot of that violet in many of her works. And I think it works. And it's one of my favorite colors. So something like that, you might think, well, I don't like violet, so it's not going to be attractive to me. But if you like the color, then you might love the painting. And we do say pastels like chalk. If you were thinking about, you know, kids' chalk, doesn't have a lot of pigment in it, but the artist's chalks are highly pigmented and they can be very pricey, and it gives a different feeling to the artwork because you're using this dry pastel, and you can layer it on top of each other, light on top of dark. Anyway, you can kind of see, if you can make it large, you might see the marks. The pastel, it's hard to make it really smooth. So just because of the nature of the material. And this is another pastel that I did at the Botanical Gardens one spring. And I was trying to keep it real loose and fresh. Doesn't have really defined areas. It's kind of impressionistic, I'd say. But I just love the feeling looking at it. Reminds me of the day I was there with my friend painting. It was a lot of fun to do. And then the two of them together, I thought would be interesting. Mine is about 13 inches tall by 15 inches wide, and that's the left one. And then Jeannie Hurst is the other artist. I'm trying to get her size is maybe around the same. Hers is 16 inches tall and 12 inches wide. And you want to think about what direction is the painting in. Is it a vertical or is it horizontal? And that could make a big difference. So in a landscape, traditionally you have horizontal images, so you could get more of the image into the picture. And in the case of Jeannie on the right, she wanted to highlight that vase and the tree and kind of condense it a little bit. So it's all the artist's choice. And you might like something horizontal to hang in your house or apartment. Unless you don't have the room, then you might go for something taller and vertical. Okay, and here's a beautiful painting of succulents, and it's a large painting. It's 18 inches tall by 24 inches, and I don't know if you can guess what the medium is that the artist used. Just looking at it, I could guess it could be oil, it could be acrylic, or it could be watercolor. It's actually turns out to be acrylic. And the artist loves the color and the shapes of all these succulents, and it's very, very colorful to me. I love all the colors that she uses. And in this case, I don't have a focus 100%. I'm not really sure. My eye kind of moves everywhere, but I might settle on that bottom left, or maybe that top right. It kind of looks like an artichoke. In this case, it might be more of an abstract design where your eye is moving all over, and you might have a totally different sense. Sometimes artists try to place their focus in like the third, they call it the rule of thirds. So it's like a third of the way down from the sides and the top, or the third of the way down from the bottom and the side on either side. I hope that's not confusing, but I love the colors in this, and it's just beautiful. Now these two I thought would be really fun to look at. Look at the one on the left and try to figure out what that one may be about. This is Jorge San's painting. And he's an abstract, usually his work is very abstract. And this is pretty abstract, but it does have an image that you may recognize as a figure. So you might say it's an abstracted figure. And it's fairly large. And I'll tell you the title because you may or may not see it. It's called The Beekeeper. And he goes on to describe the story about domesticated bees, and how bees were shown in Egyptian art 4,500 years ago, and how bees are instrumental in pollinating our fruits and vegetables. Are very important. And you probably heard of the collapse of their hives, which has happened in the last maybe 10 years. I love the way he has all this very interesting imagery. It's makes you move around. I don't know I recognize a bee in there, but you might have to see it in person, it's really large. It's 48 inches tall by 36. And he uses mixed media. So you wouldn't know, what is it? It's graphite, which is a pencil, acrylic, and colored pencils, and crayons. There are crayons that he may be using, Crayola crayons, I don't know, or he may be using more of a fine artist grade crayon. It's just a very fascinating image. And the one on the right is another artist who I find fascinating, who paints surreal images. Everything he does is kind of dreamlike. And if you look, try to recognize what is that's growing in the foreground, the front of the painting. I wasn't sure what they were right away, but the title of it is Pitcher Plant. And the pitcher plant are one of the few carnivorous plants indigenous to the United States. And it's called, they're the North American pitcher plant. 16 inches by 20. So this one is maybe a little more than half the size, the one on the left. And it's kind of a fun a dreamscape is what he's got. So that's Paul Franz. He's got very interesting paintings, lots of fun to look at. So anyway, I hope I didn't talk too much. I would love to have been able to go back and forth with you all. So now I guess we can talk or ask questions.
I think what I'll do is I will go ahead, because we only have about 20 people on.
Okay.
Right now. So I'm going to go ahead and try and unmute everybody.
Okay, great.
Let me do that. And that way you all can just go ahead. If you have a question, why don't you just raise your hand? I'm just trying to figure out how to unmute you, because it's not allowing me to do that. All right, maybe I'll just go ahead and do this. Michele, thank you very much. By the way, only the way you explained it could only be explained by an artist. So obviously,
Yeah, it's not, it could seem mysterious to people, but really it comes down to your personal preferences and what you like. But that's what's fascinating about learning about the artists and the artwork. It's a story. It's always a story.
Well, and I loved when you and I were chatting beforehand, and what you said to me about when you view art, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about the art. It's really your view of what you think it is. If you like it, you don't like it. It doesn't matter what the critics say. So I thought that was real interesting. Does anybody have any questions? I know some of you are on mute yourself, and so if you do have a question, you're going to have to unmute yourself, it looks like. That's why it wasn't allowing me to do everybody. But
I have a comment and a question.
Okay.
I think the bee lady there reminds me of the Mardi Gras. And the second question I have is, I'm very fascinated with pottery because I did it in Jersey before I moved here. And do they let you come into the studio, the public come into the studio, or do they have classes? What's the story on the pottery?
Yes, you can take classes there. You can watch the artists create. They have wheels. They can do form. They can do the one I showed you by Fred is free form, and then they have the wheel. So if you were interested in that, you could do that, or just use the clay as a what do they call that?
Slab work. It's called slab work.
The slab work. You could do slab work, or you could just build up like his little tree stump with the bird. Anything you want, you can do there. They do have classes, and you can get the clay from them. And they have they combined all of the Virginia Beach Rec Center kilns into the Virginia Beach Art Center. You know, they used to have them in the rec centers. Now we have all of that. So there's plenty of kilns. So
that's
yeah, it's a beautiful space. You should check it out if
Oh,
you're
I'm
interested.
going to. I'm going to because I like the wheel. I did a lot of work on the wheel.
Oh,
Right.
you're brave. I can't do the wheel.
Oh, yeah.
It always goes crazy when I do it.
Michelle,
Yeah.
it was interesting your comment just now about the pottery bird, and you talked about the tree. What's interesting about looking at that, while the structure does make it look like a tree, it also looks like a hand holding
Oh, I like
the
that.
flower.
I'm trying to go back.
With the hummingbird getting the nectar from the flower in the hand. Do you see that?
Oh, yeah. You know what?
That's
Yes,
beautiful.
I didn't see
And-
that right. That's, you know
And,
what?
and so
I
I
didn't
kept,
see that right away. You're
my
right.
eye kept going back and forth. Is that a hand or is that a tree? And it didn't really matter, but you can see the way that like the fingers are holding the bud, the flower bud.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And you know, I'm not surprised because that's Fred. He always does something really different. And oh my
Anyway,
gosh, that is, you're
I
absolutely
like
right.
it
So you
very
have a
much.
good eye.
Thank you.
Very good eye. I didn't notice that.
Does anyone
I'll
else
have to tell him.
any questions for Michelle? I know somebody had asked me, had texted me about the art center. Is it open right now? You know,
They
Michelle?
actually opened a week ago today, last Friday. It's limited as to the number of people that can come into the gallery, but
Okay.
you can. And if you called the gallery, they would, you know, tell you. I spoke to someone who was in there yesterday, and she said there weren't many people, visitors, coming in, but it is open 10 to 5, Tuesday to Saturday, and then Sunday, I think it's 12 to 4 right now. It may change because the summer hours may be different, but yes, they are open.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm usually at this point in time, I won't be going in probably till June, but I'm usually there Thursdays. That's my day.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you again. You guys have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing you hopefully next week at our next Salli class. Take
Everybody
care.
have fun and be
Bye.
safe. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.